So in my previous video regarding this cheap Ryzen system, we went over how it performed just without any upgrades, just as it came straight out of the box. But in today's video, we're gonna be going over some upgrades I decided to grab for the system and just see how it does after these upgrades. Make sure to let me know if you guys wanna see more videos on these cheap pre-built OEM systems. But with that, I will go ahead and go over the upgrades that I decided to grab for this system. So the first upgrade I decided to grab is a Ryzen 5 3600. And yes, in the previous video, I was incorrect when I said that it only supports up to a 3400G. This supports, I believe, up to a 3700X. I definitely thought this system was a lot more limited than it actually was, so apologies for that. I know it's crazy, I'm wrong for once. I'm never wrong. But yeah, I grabbed the 3600 for the system. It's a pretty cheap, affordable chip nowadays. It's a 6-core, 12 threads. A major upgrade over the 4-core, 4-thread 3200G, definitely. And overall, it should give a pretty sizable uplift in single-core and multi-core performance, enough to make it a lot more viable in esports gaming, or really any game in general. So yeah, now this next upgrade is definitely not required at all. It's just something I had laying around for like 2 years now, and I finally found a use for it. It's this deep cool, low profile cooler. It's definitely a lot thicker than the OEM one that's included. So probably a pretty sizable upgrade in terms of cooling performance. But again, I don't think the 3600 necessarily needs an upgrade like this. It's just nice to have, and it's nice to actually have a use for this cooler for once. So what are you gonna do? And finally, I have the bread and butter of this upgrade video, the GPU. Now this is definitely an odd choice. I don't think many people would think to grab a GPU like this. It's a Radeon Pro WX 5100. It's a professional workstation card released in 2016, and it was definitely an interesting looking choice for me, mainly because it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which a lot of low profile cards around this price point don't have. They have like 2 or 4. And this was $56 after shipping and tax. And I do think that this is a pretty good deal considering what we're getting. We have 4 DisplayPort outs, which is definitely very nice to have on a single slot GPU like this. And that 8 gigabyte frame buffer is just going to be very nice for cranking up the textures, or really any sort of modern AAA gaming if you want to try that on this. It might not be the best price to performance overall out of any GPU, but it does fit our criteria of having no power cables necessary to power it, because we do have an 180 watt power supply. It's nice and small for this tiny little Ryzen system, and it's blue. It's going to match my CPU cooler I picked out, so bonus points for that, I guess. Now this is a Polaris card, so it unfortunately doesn't have the newest up-to-date drivers that the RDNA cards have, but I think it's probably okay for a system like this. It's not the most up-to-date GPU, but it will definitely improve the performance over the APU that was initially installed in here, which I think that's all that matters here. We're really giving it a nice boost in VRAM and overall GPU performance. Now I didn't upgrade the RAM because I didn't think it was as worth it as the other upgrades, mainly because we are switching to a DGPU instead of the iGPU, so the RAM frequency won't matter quite as much. But of course, if you guys feel that you want more RAM or a higher frequency RAM, go ahead and get them. It might be worth it for you, but I think for this particular system, perfectly fine to keep what it has in there already. But with that, let's go ahead and install these upgrades into this system. Alright, now that we've got these upgrades installed, let's go ahead and see how the system performs. Alright, so I got the system set up, and you might notice that we're yet again in another unfamiliar place. That's because I am currently dog sitting for my aunt, so that's cool, I guess. But yeah, I have the system fully upgraded, and we're going to go ahead and see how the system performs after said upgrades. Alright, so we're going to start things off with Minecraft, and we are going to be playing at the 720p resolution initially, just to see how much performance we have actually gained. And then I'll go up to a higher resolution, like 1080p, just to see how much fidelity we can get with this new GPU. But with that, let's go ahead and generate a new world. Let's see how long it takes for us to generate this new world, because it didn't really take that long with the other CPU either, but it's cool to see anyways, I guess. And just like that, we are in. And again, we are playing with Optifine with all the performance settings enabled with 8 render distance for now. I think with the CPU we can up it a bit, but for now we're just gonna play with the settings we did before, and we're getting a pretty substantial FPS right now. I actually went ahead and enabled a better frame counter because I forgot that the Minecraft one sucks and it's super pale, so it's hard to see, but this is with the same settings as before. 720p, 8 render distance. It's just, and the only difference is obviously our upgrades that we performed. And like very obviously, base Minecraft without any shaders is very easy to run on the system. We're running at over 1,000 FPS easily. And I do think that's really showing how much of an upgrade that 3600 was. We are seeing quite a lot of FPS right now, and we are at 720p granted, so, oh my god, I'm about to die. We are seeing quite a lot of FPS, and obviously it's 720p, so it's probably a bit lower than you want to play on the system, but it's cool to see just how much better we're doing with this new system and upgrades. But let's go ahead and try some shaders out real quick. All right, with the light shader pack at 720p, we're getting over 200 FPS. Again, I don't think most people would want to play this game at 720p on this particular setup, but we're definitely gaming at a much higher frame rate than previously before the upgrades, and that's really cool to see. Obviously, if you wanted to game at this resolution and settings, you'd have a great time, and I think you could definitely up the render distance a bit, but overall, obviously, great time with the light shader pack. Let's go ahead and try the Extreme VL shader pack real quick. All right, so we are in with the Extreme VL shader pack. This is a decently intense shader, and we're still hovering around the 100 FPS range at 720p. Now, remember, I did say that if you wanted to get a better Minecraft shader experience, the GPU is definitely a very good upgrade to grab. And I think that's showing here, because you see we're running maybe 3 to 4 times higher than before, which is definitely an improvement. We're no longer at that cinematic FPS range. We're definitely at a more playable, maybe even slightly competitive frame rate. Probably not the best with the resolution, but I mean, hey, it is Minecraft with a shader pack running at about 100 FPS. So really, can you really complain? But let's go ahead and up the resolution to 1080p real quick and see how it does. All right, so I am back in Minecraft with the 1080p resolution, and I did up the render distance to 12, and we're now running in the 800 FPS range. Of course, as you go along, it will drop or fluctuate in FPS, but obviously still a very nice Minecraft experience at a decent resolution. 1080p isn't the highest resolution in the world, but I think for a system like this, 1080p is pretty fair to use. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could definitely go at a higher resolution in Minecraft, but I think this shows a pretty realistic scenario for most people who want to grab these upgrades. 1080p monitors are pretty dirt cheap nowadays, even high refresh rate ones. So obviously Minecraft without any shaders, high refresh rate all day, it looks great. But how about some shaders? All right, we are back with the light shader pack at 1080p, 12 render distance, and we're still above 60 FPS. We're in a much more dense area of trees right now, so it might be a little more intensive than before. Oh, there's a nice cave down there. That's cool. But we're still at a more than playable frame rate with shaders at 1080p with the higher render distance, so that's cool. Definitely performing better than before, and that's really the important thing here. We are seeing quite a substantial increase in performance. At this point, we're definitely GPU bound, so it's really showing the GPU upgrade rather than the CPU upgrade, but overall, the system is working pretty good with these shaders and this resolution and these settings. But let's go ahead and see how the Extreme VL does real quick with these settings. All right, so we are back with the Extreme VL, and we're definitely running at a lower frame rate. I would still deem this pretty playable. It's not like the worst experience in the world. I think we're running about like this with the light shader pack at 720p on the system before the upgrades, so you can definitely see the upgrade there. Probably not the most ideal experience playing Minecraft, but still definitely playable for a game like this. Probably good for some screenshots or something. You could definitely crank the resolution up higher if you really wanted to, just for some screenshots, of course, not for actual gameplay. But in terms of how far we've come upgrading the system, I definitely think that we're seeing quite a boost in fidelity, performance, and just overall usability here. So that's really good to see. It's becoming nighttime right now. Sorry, bye-bye sun. But yeah, I'm pretty happy here with Minecraft. Obviously, Minecraft isn't the most intensive game in the world, but hey, we're making progress here. Let's go ahead into the next game and see how other games perform. All right, we are back in some CS2, and again, we are at the same settings as before, lowest settings besides FSR at 720p. And we're gonna go ahead and see how the system performs after these upgrades. I'm gonna start out with a deathmatch just to kind of replicate what I did before, and then I might switch to a casual game. But I do think we're gonna see some good FPS here at 720p, and then obviously we'll go to 1080p after this. But let's go ahead and see how we're doing right now. All right, so off the bat, I'm trying here. Okay. Off the bat, we're running at close to 200 FPS, at least on this particular map. Hello, you're gonna let me kill you? Okay, never mind. But yeah, we're running pretty good so far. Obviously, it is 720p, so it's not the most ideal resolution in the world. Oh my gosh, I missed all my shots. I missed every single one of them. As I was saying though, 720p, not the highest resolution for a competitive esports gamer, but it is showing just how far we've come, because I think we're like right below a 60 FPS average before this. And obviously this is deathmatch, so it's a little more intensive than a competitive or casual game mode, and I keep freaking getting killed. Definitely more than playable on a map like this, and I believe like I said, on those less intensive game modes, you would see a much more competitive frame rate. I keep trying to focus on the frame rate. It's dropping right now for some reason. I'm gonna go ahead and take it to a casual match real quick just to kind of see how much performance we can gain on those type of games. All right, we are in a casual match this time, and obviously our frame rate is much higher. I think this probably represents what most people will probably play anyway, so I'll just stick to casual for now. But at 720p, like before, we are playing at around the high 100 FPS range, sometimes hitting 200, sometimes like the mid 150s. It just depends on what's going on. Like right here, just some smoke. Obviously 720p isn't the highest resolution in the world. Most people would probably want at least 1080p, but it's cool to see how we're doing after the upgrades. Let me just try and not get killed here. I just want to have somebody. Doesn't matter what kind of resolution you're playing, you can still play this game, so that's cool. My aunt's monitor is much better than the stupid TV I usually use, so maybe that has something to do with me doing a little bit better, but I'm still kind of focused on talking, so probably not. Looks like we're good. Where's Bomb? Where's Bomb at? Someone playing it. But yeah, 720p, pretty competitive experience so far. Maybe a little more fluctuating than you would like, but it's good. It's CS2. Let's go ahead and try it maybe 1080p real quick and see how well it does. All right, we are back in 1080p, and we're still at a nice 144, 150 FPS range. Oh wait, there's somebody right here. Can you leave me alone? I got him. Let's go. We are still playing around 100, 150. It just depends on what's going on. I would still say it's a pretty playable experience. Maybe not quite as competitive as I would have liked, but still definitely way more than playable. It's great. I got shot through I got shot through a smoke. That's crazy. I got killed through a smoke. I'm insane in this game. But yeah, CS2 is performing pretty good. Probably not as competitive as I would have liked, but I think it still serves as a good experience for most people. And overall, we're definitely seeing a massive improvement in performance versus before. So that's really good to see. And yeah, let's go ahead into the next game. All right, we are now playing some Palworld, and we're in the character creation screen. And last time we were getting about 11 FPS in this particular screen. So we're looking at a pretty good improvement. We are playing at the same settings, and it was the very low preset, so pretty much the lowest settings possible. And we are yet again at 720p, but we will be upping the resolution later on. We're just gonna see how it compares real quick. All right, we are in Palworld, and yeah, we're definitely running at a much higher frame rate than last time as far as I can remember. We're hovering around the 60 FPS range, maybe a little higher or a little lower depending on what's going on. I would still definitely like to see this game perform better, but it's Unreal Engine 5. It looks like doo-doo fart, and it kind of runs okay-ish, but definitely want better out of this game. But I mean, hey, we're definitely seeing an improvement so far. Not in graphics, unfortunately, but in performance, definitely. We're no longer hovering around the cinematic frame rate, so it's cool. Unfortunately, the trees have not been improved, so they're still in 64 trees, but I mean, hey, we're still running at a higher frame rate. It's still not quite as high as I would have liked, unfortunately. I don't know why this game is so damn intensive for this kind of graphics. If this were on Unreal Engine 5, this would be running at like 400 FPS right now, but whatever, I guess. Whatever. I'm gonna actually try and up the settings real quick, just to get a little more graphical fidelity out of this real quick. All right, I have set the settings to medium, and we're honestly still running at about the same FPS. That's very interesting. I wonder if we're running into a CPU bottleneck at this low resolution. That's definitely odd, but I mean, hey, we are definitely looking a lot better than before. Yeah, I'm actually fairly impressed right now in terms of how much of a better looking game this is versus how much similar it performs. So that's very interesting. I've never seen a game do this before. It's definitely an improvement, especially compared to before. That was just diabolical. I don't know why it was running that bad, but all that's important now is that it's running a lot better and we can go punch sheep in peace. I'm definitely interested to see how this PC would handle it at a higher resolution, but as it stands right now, 720p doesn't even look that bad, honestly. Definitely, I've seen worse 720p images in my life. Oh wow, that's a big boy right there. But anyways, let's go ahead and see how this big boy looks at 1080p. All right, we are back with 1080p and everything is still at medium, and we're running much closer to 30 FPS depending on where we're looking. It's still a playable experience for a game like this, although I'm expecting it to drop below 30 at some points, especially in more densely populated areas. Hello, big boy. You're looking good today. Looking good in 1080p. But yeah, definitely much better than before the upgrades for sure. This isn't the best looking game in the world, but it's looking pretty good. You know, I'm liking these graphics right now and this frame rate. There might be some more room in here to mess with the settings obviously get a more optimal experience. But just as it is with the medium settings with 1080p, it's looking pretty decent. I can't really complain that much. I would definitely prefer a higher frame rate, but if this is all you have, I mean, you can definitely have a playable experience in Palworld depending on what your settings are. The trees are no longer N64 trees, so that's good, I guess. And yeah, overall, pretty good experience here in Palworld. I can't really speak on later game because I do know this game gets pretty intensive the more you go on and the bigger you build your base. But obviously, just in the base game, playing at the beginning, it's going pretty good. But with that, let's go ahead into the next game and see how the next game performs. All right, we are playing some Splitgate 2. I didn't have this game in my previous video, mostly because it just wasn't out yet. But I have been having a lot of fun in this game, so it's going to be interesting to see how this system performs, especially since it's an Unreal Engine 5 game, so I'm not really sure how it will do. But from what I've seen on my main system, it's performed pretty good. But let's go ahead and see how it does on this particular system. Since I didn't have this game in my previous video, I figured I'd go ahead and see how it does at 1080p off the bat, but if I need to lower it, I will. But let's go ahead and see how it performs anyways. All right, we are in a team deathmatch game. This game does have a lot of different modes and maps, so it's going to be kind of hard to get a consistent experience, but we're just going to roll with it and see what we can do with these settings. All right, so straight off the bat, running at about 60-ish FPS, but this is one of those competitive esports shooters, so you probably want a higher frame rate than this, but still playable so far. I'm going to see if I can get some actual kills and not die. Probably not. I'm trying to focus here. I'm trying to lock in. Let's go. I got him. Okay, so basically, I just gotta kill people and not suck. I'm sucking though. I definitely think it would probably be wise to try and drop the resolution a bit on this game. I can't do it. As I was saying though, I definitely think it would be wise to drop the resolution in this particular game because the frame rate could definitely be better for competitive game. All right, we're gonna try something a little different. We're running at 900p. We're definitely running at a decently above 60 so far. Okay, hold on. I can't play if I'm not in my usual setup. It's so weird. But anyways, we're definitely running a lot better than before. Still not quite super competitive, but it's definitely a lot more playable. I got killed. Let's go. Get the frick out of here. I'm doing a little better. I think the extra frames are helping my skill a little bit. Definitely more playable than before. I'm glad to see this game be a little more playable. And this I got him. Okay, well, someone help me, but it's okay. And again, this is just one map, so other maps will probably perform better or worse depending on how big or small it is. Let me just okay, well, that was hopeless. I'm gonna go ahead and see how 720p does real quick, just to see how high the frame rate can go. All right, we are in again, and we're definitely seeing a higher frame rate now, so that's cool. This game definitely performs a little worse than CS2 on average, I'd say. But I mean, for an Unreal Engine 5 game, it's okay. Hello, you're dead. But yeah, I can't say it's the worst experience I've ever had, and this is a pretty brand new game, still in beta, so it has room for improving the performance for sure. I definitely think in a lot of these games where you have to turn it down to the lowest, you can definitely crank the textures up a little bit because you have a lot more VRAM than a lot of other cards in the similar price range. But yeah, overall, decent performance in Splitgate 2. It could definitely be better, but it could also definitely be worse. I think for a lot of these games, turning it down to like 900p would be a good sweet spot. It's higher than 720p, but it's lower than 1080p. It's probably a good medium between the two. And it won't really look that bad. I mean, even 720p here doesn't look that bad, but it could definitely be better. But yeah, let's go ahead to the next game and see how that performs. All right, we are in some Resident Evil 4 Remake, and we are playing at the 720p lowest possible settings. And again, this is just what I played on in the last video. It's a comparison between the two. I wouldn't say to play on these settings with this particular setup, but it's definitely performing quite a bit better. I think we're running at around 2 times better in this particular game. I do think that this game will showcase the GPU upgrade pretty good because it is one of those AAA games. But so far, obviously on the low settings at the 720p resolution, we're doing pretty good. Especially for this kind of game, you don't really need a rock solid 60 FPS. It's definitely more than playable, even at like 30 capped, which honestly Resident Evil 4 Remake is one of the more optimized AAA games out there. But it's definitely a good game to play on this particular system. But let's go ahead and see how it does at 1080p with these same settings. All right, we are at 1080p right now, and we're hovering around the high 30s to low 40s. Now, there are definitely more intensive parts of this game than this particular mode, so I'll probably be going over that a little bit. But as of right now, we're still looking pretty good, even at the lowest settings. And it's definitely performing well too. I definitely think you can get away with a higher graphical preset, but obviously as it is now, pretty playable experience at 1080p. All right, so I did switch to the prioritize performance preset but I did set FSR2 on quality, and I set the textures up to 4 gigabytes, so it should look quite a bit better with the textures at least. We're doing pretty good so far. I mean, honestly, I think FSR is doing a good job here. Obviously, FSR2 isn't the best or newest version of FSR, but I think for what it is here, it's doing okay. And honestly, it's performing really good. I honestly did not expect it to be doing this good, but Resident Evil 4 Remake is kind of like weird sometimes with performance. Sometimes it's like way better than you would expect for some reason, but hey, we're doing good. That's all that matters, and it definitely looks a lot better than it did before. All right, we are in the main story, and we are at one of the parts that I would consider to be probably the most intensive parts in the game. And yeah, we're hovering around the mid-30s so far, not looking too bad. I don't know why this part of the game is so intensive. It's probably a combination of like the rain and like all the fire effects and all that, but so far we're looking not too bad. Definitely a lot better than previously before we did all the upgrades, so that's nice to see. It was just about playable in the scene before we did the upgrades, but I think we were getting a little too close to the cinematic frame rates, and obviously here we're faring a lot better than before, so that's really nice to see. Oh god, they're taking Ashley away from me. No, come back. No. But yeah, I definitely think this game will be more than playable all the way through on this system. We are no longer constrained to a cinematic frame rate, so that's awesome to see. Anyways, with that, let's go ahead to the conclusion of this upgrade video. Okay, so in conclusion, after all these upgrades, do I believe that this is a good purchase? Well, I'd say it definitely depends on multiple factors here. I don't think that it's worth it to outright buy the system specifically just to upgrade it and have a gaming system. There are cheaper options out there that might net more overall price to performance. But honestly, if you already have the system, I think these upgrades are definitely a viable option to squeeze a bit more extra performance out of your system. Obviously, the Ryzen 5 3600 that I put in here is fairly capable. You're definitely being held back by the GPU. You have a lot more CPU headroom to work with. And that honestly where most of the limitations lie in the system. You don't have any dedicated PCIe cables. You just have the PCIe slot and a 180 watt power supply. That's the main limiting factor here, because you can put, I believe, up to a 3700X in here, which is an 8-core 16-thread CPU. That does fairly decent, but then you're stuck with something like this. And honestly, there are better low profile or low power options out there, like the RTX 3050 6GB, but those are very, very pricey solutions for what is a very cheap office computer. And honestly, I don't know if that would be the best bet here, to just throw money at the system like that. So I tried to balance it by putting a GPU in here that was like 50 bucks that still met the criteria needed to have a functioning system. But of course, there are upgrade paths besides the one that I showed you guys. I believe there are power supplies out there that you can swap in here that do have PCIe cables, or at least a higher wattage, that would give you a better upgrade path for the GPU. Again, the CPU isn't the limiting factor here at all. It is the GPU. And obviously with a higher wattage power supply, you would be able to get a more capable GPU in here without having to worry about it being a PCIe slot powered card. Something like an RX 580, for example, would probably be a good solution for this system if you're able to get a more powerful power supply. And also, if your individual needs required, you can also put more RAM in here. I believe this system supports up to 32 gigabytes. I mostly got this system so that I can have a small portable computer to take to my aunt's house when I have the dog sit. I do that pretty often. So having this system, it's nice enough. You know, I can edit my videos on here, which is very nice. I think the GPU's extra VRAM helps with that actually. And a good chunk of this video will likely be made using this system, which is definitely nice. I don't necessarily need it for any hardcore gaming. Maybe some light stuff here and there would be good. But in terms of gaming, it's decent enough. You can still have plenty of fun on this system playing indie games or older games or even some newer AAA games, as long as you don't mind lowering the settings. I think the best combination here without a power supply upgrade would probably be the RTX 3050 6GB, this CPU cooler, and then a 3700X. I think the CPU cooler would pair decently with a 3700X. Don't put a 3700X in here with the default CPU cooler, please. It won't perform good. But if you do decide to upgrade the power supply, there are some decent recommendations I can give you. Instead of a card like this, you could probably slot in something like an RX 580, or maybe you want to do something a little higher end. Maybe an RX 6600 would be a good start. That GPU performs pretty well for 1080p gaming. The CPU itself, I think the 3600 is a good call here. It's fairly balanced, fairly cheap, but obviously a 3700X would be cool as well. Thermal performance would also be a factor here because you don't have very many ventilation areas, but maybe you could find a way to mount extra fans or something. But yeah, overall, this isn't the worst OEM pre-built system you can get. There are some upgrade paths. The main limiting factor is the power supply, but you can still slot in a decent-ish GPU in here. I'm decently happy with this system, the way that I've upgraded it. Please let me know what you guys would do if you had this system, what upgrades you would put in here personally. I can already hear the angry comments of people disagreeing with my parts that I chose, but you know what? I accept that everyone will have their own ways of going about this, and this is my way of going about this on a budget. But anyways, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching.
A big thank you to all my channel members that have decided to give me their money and support my channel. I really appreciate that. If it weren't for them, I would not be making these videos, so thank you.